Sounds like you've been volunteered. So why don't you come on up, Julie? Are you willing to do this thing that you've been volunteered to? If you're not, we can ask somebody else.
You do the English part, I'll do the Hebrew.
Yeah, okay, sure, fine, no problem. Okay. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Go for it.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedushanim mitzivanya ahalel nel shal.
I'm going to say Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. All right, can I have a volunteer to come up and lead Kiddush for us? All right, come on up. All right, here we go. There we are. Thank you. Yeah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kadsho b'ahava uvratzon hinhilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit Ki hu yom tehila lemikradei kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim Ki vanu v'harta v'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kadshecha v'ahavat uvratzon Hinhaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat Amen. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
That's good.
All right, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
All right, folks. Let's continue on page 127, and we'll read together in English. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. We'll turn now to page 130. Lechu neranena l'Adonai, nariya letzur yishenu, nekad mafanav betoda, bizmirot nariya lo, nekad mafanav betoda, Mizmirot nariyalo, ki el gadol Adonai, umelech gadol al kol Elohim, asher beyado mechkerei aretz, v'toafot harim lo, asher beyado mechkerei aretz, v'toafot harim lo. Going to turn forward now to 138 for Lechadodi. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, la la פני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת, ולתהילה לך דודי לקראת כלה. פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, לה לה לה. פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה ומחשבה תחילה, לך דודי לקראת כלה. פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, לה לה לה. פני שבת נקבלה. מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומיצאי מתוך ההפכה. רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה. פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, לה לה לה. פני שבת נקבלה. ימין ושמאל תפרוצי, ואת אדוני תריצי. על יד איש בן פרצי, ונשמחה ונגילה, לך דודי לקראת כלה. פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, לה לה לה. פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה. תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה. פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, לה לה לה. פני שבת נקבלה. ידיד נפש. ידיד נפש, ינאי אברחמן, משוך עבדך אל רצונך. ירוץ עבדך כמו אייל, ישתחווה אל מול התורך. ירב לו ידידותך מנופת צוף לכל טעם. הדור נאה ינאי זיו העולם, נפשי חולת אהבתך. בהרות לה נועם זיווך, אז תתחזק ותתרפא, והייתה לה שמחת עולם. ותיק יאמונה ינאי רחמך, וחוסנה בין אהובך. כי זה כמה נכסף לראות בתפארת עוזך. ענה אלי חמדת ליבי, חוסנה ואל תתעלם. יגאלנה ינאי ופרוס חביבי עלי, את סוכת שלום Yana nai 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 nai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai 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 nai. All right, folks, we're going to turn to page 142 for Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hashared, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzitchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All right, we will turn to 145 now, and let's read together in English. Entrances to holiness are everywhere. The possibility of ascent is all the time, even at unlikely times and through unlikely places. There is no place on earth without the presence. Let's turn to 146 now, and please rise with me if you're able and comfortable doing so for the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. All right, please have a seat. And we'll turn to page 149, and let's read together. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Hamariv Aravim. Page 150. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Amcha Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadata. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shokbeinu uv'kumenu, nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei toratecha, uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed, ki hem chayenu, ve'orech yameinu, uvahem negeh yomam v'layla, ve'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Folks, please rise again with me if you're able and comfortable doing so as we turn to page 152 for the opening of the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vahed. All right, please feel free to have a seat. And we're continuing on 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shochvecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beineinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha Lemahan tizkaru vasitem et kol mitzvotai vitem kadoshim leloechem ani Adonai Eloechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Eloechem Adonai Elohechem emet. Let's continue on 157, and we'll read together. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. Page 158. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nara tehilot osefela, malchutecha ra'u vanecha, Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, zelianu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch leolam voed. V'nemar kifad Adonai et Yaakov, u'ge'alom yad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai gal Yisrael. I'm going to turn to 161 now. Let's read together. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, Ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. All right, 162. Yismechu v'malchutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat, ve'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchutecha, Shomre, Shomre, Shomre Shabbat Vekore Oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshei, Mekadeshei Shavi Shabbat. Kulam Yisbehu Veyitangu Mituvecha Shabbat. Yismechu V'malchutecha Shomre, Shomre, Shomre Shabbat Vekore Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu V'malchutecha Shomre, Shomre, Shomre Shabbat Vekore Oneg Shabbat. Ve'ashvi Ratzita bo Vekidashto Shabbat. Chemdad Yamim Oto Karata Shabbat. Yismechu V'malchutecha Shomre, Shomre, Shomre Shabbat Vekore Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu V'malchutecha Shomre, Shomre, Shomre Shabbat Vekore Oneg Shabbat. Zecher L'maseh V'reshit Shabbat. Zecher L'maseh V'reshit Shabbat. Yismechu V'malchutecha Shomre, Shomre, Shomre Shabbat Vekore Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu V'malchutecha Shomre, Shomre, Shomre Shabbat Vekore Oneg Shabbat. All right, folks, we are turning now to 164. Please rise with me if you are able and comfortable doing so for the beginning of the Amidah. Adonai Sifatai Tiftachu Fi Yagi Tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Page 166. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chastei Avot ve'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechaye Metim atah Rav Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye Metim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Micha Mocha Bal Gevurot, Umito Melach, Melech Memit Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'chayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hametim. All right, folks, feel free to have a seat. And we will read together on 171. Days pass, and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see, wherever we gaze, that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Right. Let's read together on 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu b'yamcha Yisrael, utfilatam b'ava tekabel, utahil ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha, el karov l'chol korav, pnei alavadecha v'chonenu, shefok ruchacha aleinu, v'techazena einenu b'shuvcha l'tzion berachamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Hamachazir Shchinato Litzion. We're going to turn to 176 now. And as we do for the Thanksgiving blessing, we'll give folks a chance to share something you're feeling grateful about this week. We'll begin with the English up at the top here. And then if you'd like to share something, just raise your hand. And I think Robin will come around with the microphone. Let's read. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks.
I got notification this week that my Social Security application has gone in, so we're starting getting money towards the end of September.
That's great. Thank you.
After having fallen down my front steps about 2 weeks ago or so, I am so grateful that the operation on my neck was very successful. I am without any pain, and I am really grateful to be back here again. Thank you.
We're really glad to have you back here, Bruce.
I'm very grateful to have been able to go and see my family, whom I have not seen in a year, and the trip was just great, and I'm so grateful.
That's awesome.
It's very good to have people back who've been away on trips. Patricia, Jim, Debbie, Alan. That it's very good to have everyone back with us, and of course, having Bruce back to health. Very thankful for all of that.
I am very grateful for the abundance of harvest in both my garden and well, a lot of dill. If anyone needs dill, I've got tons. And also an abundance of blackberries. So
Sounds
I've
very
been
nice.
enjoying.
Not exactly two tastes that go well together, but both very good.
You'd be surprised.
I guess I would. Okay.
So this is a continuation of something I said previously. But today is my son's 53rd birthday, my younger son. And I took time to really think about sending him a card and what I would write in it. After I talked about finding this card that my mom had written me that was mysteriously lost, and then I found it again. So I wanted to give him a card that was material, that he could hold in his hand. So I wrote out this card last week. I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and then I mailed it. Today's his birthday. And when I spoke to him today, he didn't say anything about the card. So I said, "Did you get my card?" And he says, "No." And I said, "You didn't get it?" "No." He says, "Mom, I didn't." And I said, "You know, there was something about that card that I had this feeling that I shouldn't throw away the scrap paper on which I wrote the preliminary message. And so I was able to read it to him because I saw it on the kitchen table and I kept thinking, maybe I don't need to keep this, but I needed to keep it. And I read it to him on the phone and I almost cried, and I think he almost cried too. So just think about that.
It's good you got that hunch, yeah. Otherwise, yeah, it's true. Yeah, in time for his next birthday, right?
It takes literally over a week for something to go from paper to 2 papers these days. It's crazy.
Might as well just drive it there yourself. I'm not seeing anyone's hand up on Zoom. Oh, somebody is mentioning something in chat. Anne-Marie says, among the midst of a very stressful week, the sunflowers I have grown from seeds are starting to bloom. Oh, awesome. God's way of showering me with goodness amidst negativity. Also, thanks to a stranger who was honest and helped guide me in the right direction. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Anyone else have something they want to share? All right. Baruch atah Adonai hatov shimcha ulchana elehodot. All right, folks, page 179. Let's read together. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamevarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. All right, folks, let's take a moment for our own personal prayers and reflections, and then we'll come back together with Oseh Shalom. Oseh shalom imromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Oseh shalom imromav, hu yaseh shalom Ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imeru amen. We're going to turn forward now to page 371 for the Mishaberach for healing. I'm going to read the names of those who we're praying for in our congregational community here that are on our prayer list, and then if you would like to raise your hand and mention someone else's name, you can. This week we're praying for Raphael Alietti, David Ben Esther, Terry Bennett, Dan Binbutel, Thomas Brophy, Tom Brown, Lester Bergman, Louis Calcetera, Tegan Christofferson, Keith DePan, Llewellyn Egan, Lauren Furman, Sandra Gutman, Robin Haas, David Hecht, Sheila Hickok, Sarid Katsu, Sharon Kersheimer, Helen Lewis, Jim Mason, John McFeely, John Muller, Rowan Nicciolino, Bruce Orden, Jeremy Orden, Manny Orden, Robin Orden, Ken Roberts, Jim Rosenstein, Sherry Schwartz, Shmuel Emmett Ruvain Mibeit Avraham Vasara, Liz Sussman, Timothy Swindell, Dick Watanabe, Rhonda Waxman, Elena Witter, Phyllis Young, Eugenia Zaroli, and Jaeger Zopp. And if anyone would like to mention someone, just raise your hand.
Dave Canone.
Thank you.
Joan Wagner and Carol Allen Story.
Thank you. Mi shebeirach avoteinu mekor habracha laimahotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi shebeirach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Praying for a refuah shalema, a complete and speedy recovery to all those we're holding in our hearts this evening. All right, folks, I'm going to turn off the screen here for a second. We are on Parashat Devarim this week, beginning of Deuteronomy. And the beginning of Deuteronomy marks this time of reflection when Moses looks back on what's transpired over many years of Israel's journeying in the wilderness. And one of those moments that comes to light in this parsha is something that occurred many years before, when the previous generation of Jews had been standing at the border of the land, like Moses and the people are right now, preparing to cross over. And thinking of that time, Moses says, "Thereupon I said to you, I cannot bear the burden of you myself." And I can't help but feel that that is a rather bold and uncomfortable thing to be hearing from an important communal leader, to the extent that it is hard to face the real reality of it. The impossibility of the burden that's been placed on Moses, and the fact that this burden is the people itself. One feels like this isn't the sort of thing that anyone is supposed to be saying out loud. It isn't going to be easy for the people to hear, you end up thinking. No one wants to think of themselves as a burden. People are going to be offended. And that's a problem right there, where the reality of the situation comes into conflict with what is proper and comfortable to state out in the open. There's an implicit choice facing Moses and the people here. Do we want to be comfortable, or do we want to be all right? Because the unstated price of being comfortable is not addressing the problem. And if the problem is never addressed, then things are never really going to be all right. And this is the uncomfortable truth. Just because there exists a moral obligation that we can recognize, this doesn't necessarily make that obligation any easier for us to uphold. The moral obligation to care for the other is a blessing, but it's also a burden. And sometimes that burden can be heavy indeed. And the weight of that burden is only increased when we aren't allowed or don't allow ourselves to ever acknowledge it. One of the Jewish thinkers that I feel most clearly and eloquently addresses this issue of the burden of the other and what that really means for us ethically is the French philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, who argues the obligation to care for the other is at least theoretically infinite. And this is so because our awareness of that obligation to care for the other actually precedes the sort of being-oriented consciousness whereby we constitute our awareness of the world around us. That our thinking about ourselves as existing in a world is something that really only happens in response to our awareness of the ethical burden that's put upon us of caring for the other, and our need to have some sort of context to contextualize our awareness of that moral obligation. In other words, for Levinas, he likes to regard ethics as something that precedes all other thought, that precedes our awareness of the world, that it precedes our awareness of being, that precedes even our awareness of ourselves, properly speaking. And because of that, for him, the burden to care for the other is basically infinite. But that makes a problem. Because if my obligation to care for the other is infinite, if the needs of the other are effectively infinite, and they are, then that creates a problem for me because I am a finite human being. And we are all very conscious of our finiteness, right? Our lives only go so far. And our powers only extend so far. And furthermore, we don't live in a world with just one other. We live in a world with many others. And so what are we supposed to do with that infinite burden, that infinite obligation to care? Well, for Levinas, interestingly, what he brings in at this moment is the concept of justice, which is kind of an odd thing to think about. Usually we think of justice as something that calls on us to do more, right? The demands that are placed on us by justice. But the way that he regards it, at least, justice is actually a principle of restraint or a principle of balance, right? Justice has to come in as a way of establishing some kind of balance whereby we can negotiate our obligation to care for the other in a world that contains both my finite self and many other others, all of whom are in need of my care. We need some principle to harmonize that sense of obligation, to make it fit into the dimensions of our lives. That's basically what transpires here in Parashat Devarim. Because what do we find immediately after Moses starts clearly articulating this problem? I can't bear the burden of you. His response to that, interestingly, is to establish a system of justice as a means of mediating the burdensome obligation of care in a way that's not going to crush him into the ground. That turns that obligation of care, transforms it from something that's merely a personal obligation into a social obligation. And by mediating that obligation through the community itself, by creating a system of justice to do that mediation, he's able to negotiate that burden in a way that he's better able to handle, to carry forward. This tension between the obligation of care and the demands of justice may seem pretty abstract, but it's something that has been experienced by every parent, by every child of a certain age, by every teacher, and by every leader that's worthy of the title. We all wrestle with that tension between the obligation to care for others, and the need to set some kind of boundaries, some kind of limits on that obligation so that we don't totally disappear into it. It's expressed most clearly and succinctly in our tradition with the commandment to love the stranger as yourself, an obligation that demands the finest balance between our own needs and the needs of the other, the stranger. The inner balance that we need to love strongly, but never in such a way as to let ourselves be consumed, does not come easily. Most of us wrestle with that balance in some way, shape, or form. Either dealing with a tendency to selflessly just sort of give ourselves entirely into the needs of others without anything left over for ourselves, or dealing with a tendency to want to hold back and to keep for ourselves and to not care for others in the way that we know in our hearts we ought to care for them. Moses gives us a model here. Because like Moses, we all need to find a way not to walk away from the burden of care, right? Pointedly, Moses is recalling this moment of realizing the impossibility of caring for the people some 38 years after that moment transpired, and he is still there. He is still engaged. He is still serving as a leader of the people. He found a way not to walk away from that burden of care, but also not to be crushed by it. And if finding that tricky balance requires being honest about some uncomfortable truths, then I think that what the Parsha may be suggesting here is that that may be preferable to finding ourselves in a situation where we end up disengaging altogether. So for reflection tonight, I'm curious what you think about that balance between the obligation to care and the need to establish some kind of measure for care, because we live in a world that we share with many other people and where we have to somehow attend to our own needs in the middle of that as well. Is that a balance that you find tricky to achieve in your own life? So if you'd like to reflect on this, just raise your hand. We'll get the mic around to you.
I guess I had an experience along these lines with taking care of my two girls as a single custodial parent. Mm-hmm. And at some point, my daughter, Sarah, she was now like an early teenager, and she was going to therapy. And I was invited to sit on her therapy session. Mm. So I'm sitting there, and then it was almost like she was attacking me. And she said, how did she put this? You don't treat me the same way you do my sister, Leah. And I thought about that a second, and for some reason, right then, I knew the answer. I looked her square in the eye and said, you're absolutely right. I don't. I treat the two of you equitably, because you're two totally different individuals. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Anybody else care to offer a thought? folks. Well, let's leave it there with that balance. We're going to turn back to our Siddur at this point. And let's turn to page 587. Please rise if you're able and comfortable doing so for Elenu. Is there anyone who'd care to volunteer to open the Ark for us tonight? Anybody feel like, I think I saw either, I don't know who raised their hand first, Jim or Suzanne, why don't you both come up and do it? Well, come on up. Okay, fine. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, lateit gedula liyotzer breshit, shehu sam chelkeinu liyached et shemo, vegor aleinu lamlik malchuto, vanachnu korim, umishtachavihu modim, lifnei melech, malchei amlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Feel free to have a seat. And we'll continue on page 591. Oop, yeah, there we go. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo u'shmo echad. All right, let's turn to page 598. This week in our congregation, we are mourning the deaths of Stephen Grossman, Francis Rothstein, and Joseph Feldman. We're also remembering the yahrzeits of Esther Kovitz Freeman, Irving Jaker, Gerald Klotzkin, Curtis Mosher, Lawrence Portnoff, Susan Bedrosian, Norman Dikow, Herbert Maas, Leonard Roof, Hyman Gold, Robert Drazen, Charles E. Kirk Jr., Ali Latessa, Paula Latessa, and Liana White. Please rise if you're able and comfortable doing so for the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirotei v'yamlik malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam ul'olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shemei dekudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru. Amen. And may the memories of those that we have lost be for a blessing. All right, folks, feel free to have a seat. Not a whole lot of announcements to announce for tonight in particular. As always, I encourage folks to join us tomorrow morning for Torah study and prayers. We do have a new issue of Nerot coming out pretty soon, so keep an eye out in your inboxes for that, which usually has a lot of good news about what's coming up here at Temple Concord. And I will put out my usual plug here over the last couple of weeks, which is if anyone is interested in picking up some liturgical skills that might come in handy if, for example, they wanted to volunteer to do something to help us out for high holidays this year, such as reading from the Torah or blowing shofar, etc. I am 100% available for that, so please don't hesitate to let me know that you're interested, and we can make a time, and I can help you out with that. We're going to finish up tonight on page 625 with Adon Olam, and then we'll head over into the social hall for a little bit of Oneg. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra le'et nasa v'chefzo kol azai melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora ve'hu haya ve'hu hove ve'hu yeh betifara ve'hu echad ve'en sheni lehamshilo lehachvira beli reshit beli tachlit v'lo ha'oz ve'hamisra ve'hu eli v'chai goali v'tzur chavli v'yitzara ve'hu nisi umanos li minat kosi beyom ekra beyado afkidruki ve'yetishan ve'yaira ve'imruki giviyati Adonai li velo ira. All right, folks. Here we go. Amotzi lachem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together. As our joyful prayer is said, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lachem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone, and thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Ooh, allergies.
I think it's just dry and stuff is blowing around. I was out trimming bushes and sneezing today.